It's about a 5-minute video of the race, and it ends with a checkered flag. And then we're going to stop, and then we're going to show another bit of video just after that, and I'll explain why. But this is a video of the AP archive from the '78 South African Grand Prix at Kyalami, run in nice hot weather. It was an interesting, I was there, it was a fabulous weekend in so many ways. And to put it into context, Niki was just starting his first season with Brabham-Alfa, having won the World Championship with Ferrari in '77. McLaren had won the championship in '76, '77, been a relatively difficult year, but James Hunt had driven well. '78, obviously, his hopes were in the M26, and he was hoping that he'd have a good year. But he'd really matured as a driver and as a racing person. Ferrari were Carlos Reutemann and Gilles Villeneuve, and it was the first race for the T3, the new Ferrari T3. They were on Michelin tires. There was one Renault there, also on Michelin tires, driven by Jean-Pierre Jabouille. They'd made their debut in Formula One the year before. And Tyrrell had the new 008, very low chassis for Patrick Depailler and Didier Pironi. And Jody Scheckter was in the Wolf, which the year before, of course, had won its first race in Argentina and had then won at other circuits, Monaco. So they all came to Kyalami, where you do a lot of testing, and of course it's high altitude and it's a long, long straight, so there was a lot of emphasis on top speed. And out of the blue, stage left, came the new Arrows, built in 90 days, I think it was. We now know kind of illegally, but at the time nobody knew that. Tony Southgate's car, with its incredible wings it had on the side, and it was generating more downforce, as much downforce as the Lotus 78. This was before the Lotus 79 had come out, but did come out 2 races later. And the Arrows was blindingly quick in South Africa. Riccardo Patrese led, I don't know, about 35 laps before the engine went. But it was a great race. There was a lot of oil down at Crowthorne, the first corner, the right-hander from Niki, had an engine go, had the Alpha engine go. From Rupert Keegan, who was in the Surtees, he had an oil line, I think. Patrick Tambay started from the back of the grid. Clutch went, they qualified 5th or something, really quick, not much behind James in the second McLaren, and he drove beautifully, but then went off on the oil. And Carlos Reutemann also went off on the oil down there, just hit the brakes, back end came out and went off into the catch fencing, got out of the car, and as he walked away, looked over his shoulder and saw the car erupt into flames. So didn't say much about the deformable structure of the car at the time. A couple of other little things before we start. I remember they had on race morning, they had for some reason, they had a Snoopy Beagle, massive, great Snoopy Beagle flying over the circuit. I think it was for one of the insurance companies, and MetLife probably. And anyway, they were supposed to this Beagle was supposed to be dropped from the balloon with a parachute over the circuit. And guess what? Parachute didn't open, and it landed. I was talking to Gilles, and I remember talking to Gilles, and literally this thing came down and smashed this MGTC that was lined up with other MGTCs ready for the drivers' parade, and it was the one to be driven by Gilles. That was hilarious, and I really got to know Gilles for the first time at that race. I remember chatting to him at the Kyalami Ranch for about 45 minutes about snowmobiling and Formula Atlantic and Tri-Riviere, and he knew that I was pretty close to Carlos, and I guess he was trying to get inside my brain and understand a bit about Carlos. But equally, that's when he and I really became pretty good friends, I've got to say, for the first time. And so got a lot of memories from that '78 South African Grand Prix, and more will come now as we have a look at the video. So let's roll at part 1 of the '78 South African Grand Prix Kyalami. So there's the circuit, big crowd on race day, as you can see. This is Brabham-Alfa BD46, beautiful Gordon Murray car. They're just starting up the flat 12 Alpha engine. It was a really quick package. There's Niki getting ready. Behind him, Santi Guidini, who he took from Ferrari, and he's now basically there just as Niki's mate, but ostensibly he was running the Parmalat side of things. John Watson goes out. There's Jody in the Wolf. Now, without Patrick Head, he's obviously designed the Williams, left a year before, but it's a Harvey Postlethwaite car. That was Dave Luff strapping in Emerson, Kopasuka, you saw the Ligier going out, the Brabham. There's Carlos leading the Ferraris out onto the circuit. Mario. And then Ronnie, you notice the inside shoulder of the left front is shaved away. That was because Ronnie kept blistering the tyres in practice, but that was to have a big impact in the race because his tyres lasted more than anybody else's. Another shot of Jody in the Wolf. It was a beautiful car, that Wolf, beautiful livery, the whole thing. Jody was mega. Lafitte in the Ligier, there's Tambay going out in the other McLaren. It was just a great energy about it. You can see a number of people in the pit lane and the way it was, Shorts, Mario on the go. Now, this was really funny because the grid was published with Mario on the right, even though he's P2 and Niki was on the pole. And Niki had chosen the right-hand side for the pole, but there's me, by the way. And the grid was incorrectly published. So Mario pulled up in Niki's pole position and everybody got confused and nobody knew where to go on the grid. Of course, in the end, it got sorted and Niki was able to start on the right. Interesting that he had chosen the right, is it not? Because today everybody goes on the clean side of the road, which is the left, but Niki wanted the inside into Crowthorne. And there's the Jabouille Renault Turbo. Jean-Pierre was a very, very nice guy. Look at the difference in eye openings between James's helmet. So there you go. Niki's on the pole on the right, Mario on the left. Niki, in all the excitement, great start, but then manages to get fourth gear instead of second. By the time they get down to Crowthorne, he's back to P3. Mario's leading. There he is with Jody second, Niki, James Hunt, Jabouille, Alan Jones. That was Carlos. Going down the inside there. Gilles leading the midfield pack. There's Emerson in the Kopasuka. Lots of good drivers all up and down the field. That was obviously going past the pits there. Big crowd, big South African crowd love their Formula One. There's Mario. He was struggling on the straights and the tyres started to go off. This wasn't a great race for the Lotus 78. Colin Chapman never thought it would go well there. That's Crowthorne, where all the oil was later dropped. And the race was really defined when Mario dropped back, Jody dropped out, Niki's engine blew. Riccardo Patrese then inherited the lead and was really quick, looked like he was going to win it. His engine blew. James Hunt's just pulled out there with his engine gone, doesn't look very happy, does he? Got all the crud all over his overalls. And now Emerson comes in to retire the Kopasuka. I think it was a drive shaft. There's Dave Luff, used to be at McLaren, running Kopasuka, good man. Chatting to him at the Autosport show not so long ago. Very nice guy. Yeah, Emerson doesn't look very happy, does he, there? And there they are, going past the pits. Anyway, Patrese stopped too with an engine, which then let Patrick Depailler lead the race. There's John Watson looking nice in the Brabham-Alfa. I can get to the end of this. And Patrick ran out of fuel on the last lap, and Ronnie got him on the last lap to win the race. Jabouille, Villeneuve, Lafitte, Tambay. Look at the sideways motoring there. It looks superb. It really missed. That was Clubhouse Corner, lovely corner at Kyalami. There's Carlos going in, floating in the Ferrari. And there's Tambay hanging on well in the McLaren from the back of the grid, as I say, very underrated driver. He'd be a very good man to be number two, not number two, but he's a good Ferrari driver, wasn't he? Replaced Gilles. There's Jody taking the lead from Mario. The crowd loved that one. Jody in practice was a bit childish. The engine was misfiring. And at one point, I remember him coming into the Wolf pit and just revving the blazers out of the thing just to let the mechanics know it was misfiring, and then wheel spinning out of the pit lane again. Look at Depailler there, a little bit sideways in the Tyrrell. There goes John Watson. There's Brett Lunger leading a pack, and then finally Mario is coming up to lap them. But Mario's now in trouble with his tyres, and also he's starting to run out of fuel as well. Overhead shot of Alan Jones in the beautiful FW06 Williams. I think that is. I think it's very difficult to tell, isn't it? But yeah, past the straight. Lovely circuit, Kyalami. Look at all the catch fencing they had. That was just, we just took it for granted. Catch fencing, catch fencing. There's Hector back in the Lotus 78, run by Ian Dawson, the former mechanic of Mario Andretti. Finally, the checkered flag comes out, and there's supposed to be Patrick Depailler, but Ronnie Peterson has passed him on the last lap. His tyre's in pretty good shape and takes the win. Patrick drives into the scrutineering area very quickly and obviously very annoyed. And there's Hector back, Didier Peroni in the other Tyrrell, who finished sixth. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. It was all pretty breathless, quick stuff. But the reason I paused it there, and we got a little bit more to show, is because this video, unlike many of the others that we're looking at, actually includes a little bit of an interview with Ronnie and Patrick Depailler after the race. Now, I have to kind of make apologies for the line of questioning, because in the first interview, which is with Ronnie, the interviewer says something like, but what about Jody Scheckter? You must feel so sorry for him. And Ronnie just says, well, he was behind anyway when he stopped, which is a good answer, rather silly question. And then, you know, and he says there was a lot going on, it was a hard race, and he's talking about the oil, so that's that. And then Patrick Depailler, who's just lost the race because he's run out of fuel on the last lap. The guy says, how was the race? Was it a hard race, Patrick? And he sort of looked at him, what are you talking about? And then he does say at the end, no, but the car was very good. And you just get a little bit of a feel for how Patrick and Ronnie were and what it was like to talk to them. So let's run this very short second vid.
So tell us how it went.
Huh?
Tell us how the race went.
Well, that was a
Good race.
kept the charging running up.
I think you were lucky that Scheckter dropped out.
Huh?
You think you were lucky because of Scheckter dropping out?
He dropped out. No, he dropped out behind me.
Was it a very difficult race? Was it the conditions difficult? Was it
It was hard.
A lot of big drivers seemed to drop out.
Well, it was a difficult condition with a lot of oil on the track, which cost some driver the race, of course. No fucking rep company.
I haven't told twice, I don't remember.
Was it a difficult race?
No, it was quite easy.
Was it a very hot day? Did that affect you?
No, not really.
Number 4, 6, and the car?
The car was perfect.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lovely shots there after the race. I wanted to talk about who's in the background there as well. When they're interviewing Ronnie, you see Rex Hart and Bobby Clark, his two mechanics. And Rex Hart, of course, is the father of Lee Hart, who was Lewis Hamilton's mechanic for many years at McLaren. He's still at McLaren, still on the race team. Good man, as of course is Rex. And in the background, when they're talking to Patrick Depailler, you see walking past Alex Blignor, who used to race. He raced in a South African Grand Prix, I think, certainly a Iran Grand Prix in the mid-60s, but he was the organizer of the South African Grand Prix. And then behind him with a moustache, you see Ian Dawson, the mechanic I mentioned, who was at Team Lotus. And then at that point, he was working for Hector Rabach on the Lotus 78. So you see there, Ronnie and Patrick, you see the chaos of the lack of the real organization of the podium and the interviews and everything else. But equally, you see the natural touch and feel of motor racing. And the way Ronnie's got that Goodyear cap not really fitting very well. And you look at the way the drivers preen themselves today in front of the mirror or whatever in the pre-air, in the preamble to the podium, and everything has to be perfect. And there's Ronnie, and we've got the label sticking out the back somewhere. And Patrick Depailler looks like he's just desperate for a cigarette more than anything else. I just love it. And yeah, all you can say is different times, can't you? It was, and the other thing about South Africa, which I used to love, and which was symptomatic of that race, was the Kyalami Ranch, which was at the bottom of the valley there, below the circuit. And it had the swimming pool, the tennis courts, the chalets with the straw roofs, the beautiful restaurant. And that's where everybody was. And you just hung out there. And James Hunt wasn't there that year. I remember he stayed with friends, but everybody else was there. And, you could actually be on a chaise longue, a sunbather, by the pool with a stopwatch, and you could time the cars going around the circuit in the distance at a certain point, and you could do your lap charting from there almost. And they played tennis, they played backgammon, they played table tennis, they swam, and that's where I got to know Gilles so well. And I really miss. I mean, it was what it was, and I'm just very lucky, I think, to have been around then. And you saw me there on the grid. I always used to have a white Eaton bag, which I was very proud of, because it was Eaton, as in the Carlos Reutemann personal sponsor. Eaton was a big industrial company, but nobody else had this bag, and I loved it. I don't know what I had in there. I think I had a lap chart, probably had a camera or two, a few other bits and bobs. But yeah, what a wonderful time. Just brilliant. Loved it.